what's up guys? Hardleg Joe here with one of those vlog style things. As you probably are already aware, we have a new limited and forbidden list after 6 months with no limited or forbidden list, which is pretty neat. Starts March 31st, 2017. And as you're probably aware, according to the Asian Eyes Act of 2017, all Yugi tubers are legally required to look at the ban list and discuss their thoughts on it, so I'm just going to go through everything in here real quick. Starting off the list, forbidden was limited, Magispector Unicorn Kirin. Good. Most good indeed. I did not like this card, and I'm glad that it's gone. Up next, newly forbidden, the Tyrant Neptune. This is actually kind of a mixed bag for me. On the one hand, I know that it's probably for the best. There's a really broken combo you can do with this. If you're unfamiliar with the Tyrant Neptune, it's a really neat card. You can tribute a 1 or 2 monsters for its summon. It'll gain the combined attack of both monsters, and then you can target one of the monsters you tributed and gain its effects and name. So, I'm not sure if I ever mentioned this before, but I actually used to collect Tyrant Neptunes. I have a page in the back of my trade binder just full of Tyrant Neptunes. Because I remember seeing this a few years ago and just being like, this thing will be broken at some point. There will eventually be a card that you'll be able to tribute and steal its effects, and you will just be unstoppable. And unfortunately, I was correct. Or not just correct, I was too correct. I assumed there would be something that would be good, it would be meta. I didn't know it would be like game-breaking. If you're unfamiliar with the combo, there's a fusion monster coming out in the next set, Maximum Crisis. It's like level 1. And its effect is that it gains 500 attack per level, it can inflict damage equal to its attack, and it's unaffected by all card effects. And I think it would increase its level somehow. The point is, at level 1, it's just doing 500, being unaffected and being attacked for 500, no big deal. But the Tyrant Neptune is level 10, so you tribute over that thing, gain its effects, and suddenly you have a 5,000 attack point monster that's unaffected by card effects that can inflict 5,000 burn damage each turn. And you can summon that fusion monster with instant fusion. So it was kind of a 2-card combo that would just win you the game and a little too broken. I understand why it had to go. I'm just sad to see it go. I had some really cool things planned. I was going to make like a relinquished kaiju deck where I give my opponent a kaiju and then I summon a kaiju and then I summon relinquished and then I normal summon the Tyrant Neptune using the kaiju and relinquished and then take relinquished effect but have the attack of the kaiju. So then I can absorb the other kaiju and have like a 9,000 attack point monster and just go nuts. But sadly, it'll be a long time before that comes out, if ever. So moving on, what else is banned? Vanity's Emptiness. That's another good card for me. Vanity's Emptiness was kind of cool when it first came out. I think if you had a deck that could revolve around not special summoning, that it was kind of neat to put that in there. Same thing with Skill Drain. There was a time when so many decks special summoned that it was fine having this at 3, and then it went to limited, and then it became one of those cards that, like, if you got it on your first turn, you just kind of won, because you could lock your opponent down for a turn or two, and then just swarm the field next turn. So I'm glad to see it go. Moving on to limited cards you can only have at 1, we have Max C. Kind of a strange choice. I never really considered Max C to be all that broken of a card. I kind of feel like there's a good back and forth. It's kind of well designed in that way. Like, you could discard it, and then your opponent either has to special summon a lot and continue with their play, and then give you a lot of cards, or they could stop, and then you've just wasted it, but they've also stalled their turn out. I understand, though, that like at the tournament level, it would often become this game of you make an unbreakable board, and then you keep Max C in your hand, and as soon as your opponent's turn starts, you just discard Max C. Because it's like, the only way they're going to be able to break your board, usually, is by summoning a whole bunch of things. And then it's like, well, if they don't OTK you, then you're going to have like 5 cards again, and you'll be able to OTK them. So it didn't really make for an interesting game state at the higher tiers where you have these break my board or lose kind of situation. So then the rest of the cards that are on the limited list are all cards that used to be forbidden that have gotten erratas. They have changed the way they worked. There's a set coming out at the end of the month. I believe it's at the same time that this is coming out, March 31st, that has a lot of reprinted cards and a lot of errated cards. So you'll be seeing all of these coming back with slightly changed effects. Just in case you're unfamiliar with all the erratas, I'll go through them real quick. We have Rescue Cat. Rescue Cat, kind of like Rescue Rabbit. Its effect used to be that you could tribute it to summon 2 level 3 or lower beasts from your deck, and then they're destroyed during the end phase. Now those cards have their effects negated. Previously they weren't negated, so you could actually do some crazy combos and stuff like that. I believe there was some kind of synchro thing where you go into like Quasar. I don't know, I never played when Rescue Cat was available. But now that it negates their effects, it seems like it'll still be kind of useful, kind of like Rescue Rabbit. You can use it to make Ixie plays or Synchro plays and stuff like that, but it won't be completely broken. Likewise, we have Brionac, Dragon of the Ice Barrier. This used to be you could discard cards to send cards on the field back to the hand, and that was either player's cards, and you could activate that effect as many times as you wanted during a turn. So you could do things like Synchro Summon, and then activate Call of the Haunted, and then send it back to your hand and reset it, or reset Swords of Revealing Light. There are a lot of really degenerate combos, because you could just keep discarding things to send things back to your hand. Plus the idea of just sending things back to your opponent's hand, still pretty strong. What they did to this was they made it a once per turn, and they made it so you can only target your opponent's cards. So you can't redo your own combos, you can only use it to disrupt your opponent. That being said, it's still a pretty decent synchro. I don't think we'll be seeing it a whole lot, but just like Trishula, I'm sure most synchro decks will run at least one copy of this if they can, because it is just a generic level 6 synchro, so fairly easy to make. I'm sure we'll see more of that. Brain Control. This used to be very simple. Pay 800 life points, take control of one monster your opponent controls into the end phase. It still has its effects, it can still attack, you can tribute it, you can use it for whatever. It was basically a change of heart, just you had to pay 800 life points for it, and that's why it was banned. Now they've changed it so you can only take control of a monster that can be normal summoned or set. So you can't take Ixies, Synchros, Fusions, Rituals, or like Nomi cards like Blackluster Soldier, which going into the era of Link summons where possibly we'll be seeing a lot more decks that rely on main deck monsters, that might be good. And there's always just the fact that you can use it on a Kaiju. Kaijus, most of them can be normal summoned or set. I think especially for Kaijus that try to use like the owner's seal where they give you the Kaiju and then take them back, you'll see Brain Control used. Maybe against certain like matchups in the future, maybe there's some deck that normal summons a lot. But I can't imagine you'll be seeing it everywhere. It's definitely not a staple. Next up, Future Fusion, which is one of the few cards on here that I actually played in real life against when it was at full power. This card is like, it's a continuous spell, you play it, you reveal a fusion monster in your extra deck, you send the materials from your deck to the graveyard, and then 2 standby phases later, you summon that monster out. Of course, because it's a continuous spell, you could always like MST it or destroy it before your opponent had a chance to actually get the monster out. So it wasn't all that great until Chaos Dragons, because 5-headed Dragon is a fusion monster that's any 5 dragons. So they would use Future Fusion, and it was essentially like a foolish burial for any 5 dragons from your deck. Just very, very powerful. They changed it so that you don't send the monsters until your first standby phase, and then the second standby phase you actually fusion summon it. So now you'll have to play this out and then hope it doesn't get destroyed for a turn, which makes it, I think, still useful. I think some dragon decks might still use it, maybe zombie decks. I'm sure there's something that can use it. It's just going to be a little bit more of a gamble. If your opponent has any spell trap destruction, you're going to have a bad time. And finally on here, Imperial Order. Kind of surprised to see. This is basically like a Royal Decree, but for spells. It's just a trap that says neither player can activate spells. It's continuous, and it's you pay 700 life points during your standby phases to keep it up. So the thing that it used to be was that paying the 700 life points was optional. You could pay the 700 to keep it there, or you could not pay, and then it would be destroyed. So it worked in the same way that Vanities kind of works now. You would turn it on for your opponent's turn. They can't activate spells, and then when your turn comes around, you just get rid of it so you can go off completely. Now they've changed it so that you have to pay. Like, as long as you have the life points, you have to pay that 700. So once you activate it, it's just there. Kind of like Royal Decree. The only thing is that unlike Royal Decree, you're taking that 700 every turn. So after so many turns, you're going to have a bad time. Of course, at 1, I don't think we'll be seeing too much of it, but especially for like a Paleozoic deck or any trap-heavy deck, any deck that doesn't really need spells, I think you'll start seeing Imperial Order in them. If it ever comes back to 3, it might be one of those cheeky like staples that, oh, I have a deck that doesn't use any spells, so I made Imperial Order just to shut everyone down. And finally, let's see, Semi-Limited, Wisdom Eye Magician. I don't know why Wisdom Eye Magician was really banned in the first place. It's not really that powerful of a card, and Magician Pendulums were never all that great, so yeah, that's fine. You can have 2 of those. Zodiac Rat Pier. That slows the deck down a little bit without completely killing it, so I think that's probably a good choice at this point. And finally, semi-limited Interrupted Kaiju Slumber. I mean, it's a dark hole that summons kaijus, and dark hole's semi-limited, so makes sense for Interrupted Kaiju Slumber to be semi-limited. The only thing brought off the ban list completely is Sangan, which, again, got kind of an errata to it. If you're unfamiliar with Sangan, when it's sent to the graveyard, you can add a monster with 1500 or less attack from your deck to your hand. So it searches out a lot of things, like very, very generic searcher. And what they changed about it was that you could search whatever, but you can't activate cards or effects with that name that turn. So you could search something, but you're not immediately using it. Of course, most of the degenerate things I've seen with Sangan are people using it to search like pieces of Exodia. So I wouldn't be surprised if Exodia decks came back, because normally you don't activate the pieces of Exodia, you just sort of have them in your hand. So there you go, I went over the ban list, those are my thoughts. I spent more time explaining errated cards than I thought, but I figured I should, because I know a lot of the people I've watched have just sort of been like, oh, this has been changed, but they didn't really say what it used to do or what it does, so maybe you learned something or two. You have to comment in the comments. Anyway, that's it. I'll see you guys later. Oh wait! There's no tree toad on here! And no Bahamut shark either! and still no solemn strike. I'm kind of okay with solemn strike now, but especially after Paleozoics have been topping all over the place, you're not gonna put any tree toad on here? Not even a semi-limit? No? Sadness. I guess at least I got Kieran. Maybe next time.